This is the story of how my sister forged our father's will, stole everything he left me, and how I gave her the life she always wanted, just to take it apart, piece by piece. She thought she inherited wealth. What she got was a performance, a designer dream built on lies. And when it all collapsed, the car, the penthouse, the praise, she looked around and realized the truth. The world she worshipped never existed. I didn't ruin her life. I let her live the one she deserved. The day we buried our father, my sister showed up in white. Not off-white, not cream, stark, glaring white. A silk dress that clung to her like it was stitched from arrogance itself. She wore heels that clicked louder than the eulogy and sunglasses that hid the fact she never cried. Lana always knew how to make an entrance, even at a funeral. I stood on the other side of the casket, silent, watching her smile at the guests like it was a dinner party. She hugged people she hadn't spoken to in years. She whispered condolences like she was handing out wedding invitations. Her father had barely been cold in the ground before she started asking about the will. "Where is it?" she said to me later that night, drink in hand, not even trying to pretend she was grieving. "He left everything to you, didn't he?" I didn't answer. She already knew. Dad had made it clear years ago. He trusted me with the estate. Lana had always been the risk, the hurricane in heels. She blew through jobs, boyfriends, money. She didn't visit when Mom got sick. She didn't show up until Dad's third stroke. And yet, I still held on to the hope that losing our last parent might bring her closer to something real, some honesty. But when I showed up to the lawyer's office a week later, I knew something was wrong. The will had changed. Completely. It named Lana as sole beneficiary. It gave her everything. The house, the stocks, the life insurance, even the old watches Dad kept in the safe. I sat in that chair, listening to the lawyer read the words like they were holy scripture, my hands going cold. The signature at the bottom was shaky, sloppy. The date was exactly 1 week before Dad's last stroke. I knew he hadn't signed anything. He couldn't even hold a pen by then. She had forged it. And she stood there next to me in that office, feigning confusion, with a little furrow of her brow and a concerned glance my way. She reached over to touch my arm and said, "I had no idea." She said it like a snake shedding skin. I didn't fight. I didn't call the police or scream or beg. She wanted to be rich? Let her feel rich. Let her taste it. Because I wasn't going to take back what she stole. I was going to make her choke on it. She moved into the penthouse 3 months later. Downtown, sleek glass, rooftop view, doorman with white gloves. She Instagrammed every corner like it was a throne room. The caption on the photo of the terrace said, "Earned, not given." She started wearing labels she used to mispronounce. Yves Saint Laurent, Celine, Dior. She bought a black Jaguar with red leather seats and parked it in front of restaurants she couldn't pronounce. She told everyone she had made it, that Dad had wanted her to lead the family. No one questioned her, because money makes lies sound like truth. But lies are paper walls. And I knew every corner of the structure she was building, because I was the one feeding it. It started with an email from a wealth management advisor named Jacob Brennan, a name I made up, a website I built overnight, a voice I practiced until it didn't sound like mine. He reached out to her with a proposition, said he'd been watching her profile, said she was exactly the kind of investor his firm specialized in. She bet. Of course she did. She'd always been drawn to glitter. We started small, just numbers on a screen, mock account balances, returns, graphs and projections. She got monthly statements showing fake profits, fake portfolios. Then came the introductions, virtual meetings with real estate developers and venture capitalists, all voices I hired from freelance actors, pre-scripted calls, polished decks, convincing lies. She bought in. Hard. She told people she was becoming a businesswoman. She posted motivational quotes, started a podcast, called herself self-made. And every dollar she spent, every shoe, every spa, every ounce of caviar, was just a deeper dive into a fantasy she didn't know was crafted for her. But the brilliance of it wasn't just the illusion of wealth. It was what I did underneath it. The offshore accounts, the shells, the properties, not in her name. The luxury cards, prepaid, with set limits and expiration dates I controlled. Everything she thought was hers was rented from smoke. The walls began to creak when the tax letters came. Unpaid property tax on homes she thought she owned. Filing discrepancies. Missing documents. She forwarded them to Jacob, asking what to do. He reassured her. Said it was routine. Then stopped replying. A week later, her accounts froze. Not because of the government, because I made them. The banking portal redirected to a server error page, the app wouldn't load, the statements disappeared. She called Jacob's number. Disconnected. She went to the address on the website. It didn't exist. The apartment complex there had never heard of Brennan and Locke Investments. She tried to log into her luxury card accounts. Declined. One after another. She walked into the Chanel store that day with her personal shopper waiting and had her card declined 5 times. She called the concierge line in front of the clerk. Disconnected. Her world cracked in public. She went home to her penthouse. The locks had changed. The building manager told her the lease was terminated. She screamed. She made threats. She called the police. They told her the tenant on record was a company, not her. She had no standing. That night, she slept in her car. The Jaguar she thought she owned still had a lien on it, financed under a shell account that defaulted once I pulled the plug. By the end of the week, she had nothing but her clothes and her phone. She called me, of course she did. 27 missed calls. I didn't answer. She sent a text. What did you do? I didn't reply. Because it wasn't about taking back the money. It was about watching her look around and realize the world she worshipped was never hers. It was paper. It was illusion. And now, it was ash. 3 weeks after her empire collapsed, she showed up at my door. No Jaguar, no heels, just a canvas bag over one shoulder and eyes that had finally learned how to look down. She didn't ring the bell. She knocked. Soft, like a child afraid of waking someone dangerous. I didn't answer. She sat on the steps for hours. At some point, it started raining. She didn't move. When the sun went down, I peeked through the curtain and saw her shivering under the street lamp glow. I waited until she left. Not because I was afraid of facing her, because she hadn't suffered enough. I needed her to feel the silence, the void, the same hollow she forced on me the moment she signed that lie and smiled like she deserved what was mine. She checked herself into a cheap motel on the edge of town. She stayed there under a fake name, afraid creditors would find her. No cards worked anymore, no bank accounts. She survived on cash she had stuffed into a purse the day she got locked out of the Penthouse. She pawned her watches, sold the bags, tried to sell the designer shoes but got laughed out of a resale shop. Everyone's dumping this brand, the clerk told her. No one wants it anymore. She started borrowing money from old friends. At first they were sympathetic. Then she got desperate. On by one, they stopped answering. She applied for jobs, admin, reception, retail. She lied on the applications, said she'd been running a startup for 3 years. No one cared. Her name had been noise, not value. A background check killed every offer. She tried starting a GoFundMe. She wrote a long post about identity theft and corrupt advisors. She used phrases like financial abuse and economic trauma. She said a man had tricked her. She said she was the victim. Nobody donated. The comments turned on her people, dug up the old photos, the car, the wine, the vacations. They remembered her bragging, her quotes about being too smart to ever be broke again. One comment said, "Looks like karma wears Prada too." I watched all of it. I had burner accounts in every thread. Sometimes I added fuel. but most of the time I just watched. She moved into a sublet, a basement studio with one window and peeling paint. She posted a selfie with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders and captioned it, "Starting over." The likes didn't come. And then came the audit, the real one not from me. The IRS, because even a fake empire leaves a footprint. The shell accounts I built had been registered under LLCs she signed for. She thought she was securing her future. She was really signing responsibility for years of falsified earnings, unrealized capital gains, and undeclared assets. How they wanted taxes on millions of bills, she stopped posting in waves. Her face went gray in every picture. She stopped posting, stopped tweeting, stopped trying to explain. I knew what she was feeling. It wasn't loss. It was confusion. Because the worst pain isn't losing everything. It's realizing you never had it. And that's what I gave her. A life so vivid, so convincing, so perfectly tailored to every one of her desires, that she never once stopped to question it. Until the floor gave out. She went to a therapist. Said she was having dissociative episodes. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't remember who she was before it all. She said she kept having dreams about marble floors and silk sheets, only to wake up to mold on the ceiling and cold air through a broken vent. She called me again. This time I picked up. I didn't speak. She breathed into the phone for a full minute before whispering, "Why?" I waited. Then I asked, "Why did you forge it?" Silence. Then a sob. Then the truth. Because I knew he wouldn't leave it to me. There it was. No remorse. Just justification. She didn't regret what she did. She regretted that she failed to keep it. So I told her the final truth. There never were investors, never a firm, never any money. She didn't answer. I let it hang. Then I said, "You stole my life. I just made sure you never got to enjoy it." Click. I didn't block her. I wanted her to hear the silence stretch because that silence, that was what I lived in while she posed in my father's chair. And now it was hers permanently too. 2 months passed before I saw her again. It was at the county courthouse, a mandatory appearance. The IRS had taken her to court over unpaid taxes on funds she never truly had. She walked in wearing a black thrift store blazer, sleeves too long, collar frayed. Her hair was tied back in a bun that looked more like a nod of defeat than style. She looked smaller, thinner, hollow. But what struck me most was her silence. Lana, who used to speak over anyone to control the room, barely raised her eyes as the judge read through her file. Every line of those false returns, every fake deposit, every fabricated profit. They were all printed out, bound in folders stacked like bricks on the bench beside the clerk. Her lawyer, a court-appointed one who looked fresh out of law school, tried to explain the story. She was manipulated, he said, targeted by a fraud ring. Convinced she was making legitimate investments, he handed over screenshots, the fake emails, the banking app I'd built from scratch, the fictional Jacob Brennan. She didn't know the accounts weren't real, the lawyer insisted. She was set up. The judge didn't even blink. Nevertheless, she is liable, he said. Taxes are not optional. Claims of ignorance or manipulation do not erase financial responsibility. The ruling was swift. She owed $643,000 in unpaid federal taxes, plus interest. No restitution. No mercy. Outside, I waited. I didn't expect her to notice me in the crowd, but she did. She stopped walking, her eyes met mine, then scanned my clothes, my expression, my calm. She stepped closer. "You watched all of this happen?" she said, voice brittle. "You planned it, every part." I nodded. She stared at me. "You ruined my life." "No," I said, "you ruined mine. I just made sure you understood what that feels like." She laughed. It was dry, bitter, and desperate. "What now?" she asked. "Are you going to make sure I rot?" I shook my head. "No. I'm done." She blinked. "Why?" "Because there's nothing left to take." And it was true. There was no more empire to dismantle, no more fantasy to unravel. She had been dragged through illusion and stripped bare by her own ambition. The punishment wasn't prison, it was permanence, living every day in the wreckage of a life she thought she deserved. She didn't follow me as I walked away. She didn't shout or cry, just stood there, surrounded by strangers, shaking under the weight of something heavier than guilt. Her own mind. She tried to rebuild. Got a job waiting tables at a bistro near the outskirts of the city. Someone posted a photo of her in the uniform. The comments were brutal. From penthouse to pancakes. Reality check served daily. She deleted her accounts a week later. No more filtered selfies, no motivational quotes, no curated illusions, just silence. I check in sometimes. She didn't know. I watched as her name slipped further from relevance. She moved to a smaller town, changed her last name, tried to live like someone no one remembered. But that's the thing about legacies. Even fake ones leave scars. She never trusted people again. Not men, not jobs, not even herself. She questioned every decision, every opportunity. Paranoia ate her from the inside. She started seeing a therapist regularly, paid in cash. I know because I paid the first year's sessions through a donation fund she never traded. Not out of kindness, out of design. Because healing wouldn't be easy. It would be slow and painful and real. I wanted her to wake up every morning wondering if the world she lived in was still an illusion. To live in fear not of poverty, but of false comfort. To second-guess every smile, every break, every door that seemed too cleanly opened. She would never know when the trick ended. Because the real trick wasn't the fake wealth. It was the lie she told herself. That she deserved what she stole. And now she knows the truth. She didn't lose the money. She'd lost something worse. Her sense of reality. A year passed. The seasons turned like pages, but for Lana, time moved differently. It wasn't marked by birthdays or holidays, but by due dates and overdue notices, job rejections, and tight-lipped managers who always watched too closely. I heard she got a second job at a dry cleaner. Early mornings, harsh chemical smell, hands raw from detergent and steam. The tips helped keep her in that tiny apartment above a liquor store. The shower barely worked. The heater clicked like it was about to give out. And yet, she clung to it like it was a castle, because now she knew how quickly comfort can vanish. I never contacted her again. I didn't need to. She lived every day carrying the weight of a life she thought she owned, only to realize it was all performance, fabricated status, a spotlight held over her by someone she thought was beneath her. But one last thread needed cutting. Our parents' graves. The headstones had been paid for with the same money she stole. When she forged the will, she insisted on handling the arrangements. I had let her. I didn't argue. I knew what I was planning even then. But now I couldn't let their memory be marked by her lie. So I hired someone to replace the headstones. Simple granite, nothing ornate, just clean, solid truth. Beneath Dad's name it read, "Beloved Father, betrayed in death." And under Mom's, she saw through the mask and forgave anyway. I stood there in the cold spring wind, hands in my coat, looking down at the names. Behind me the cemetery was silent, empty, a world apart from the chaos they had both left behind. Then I heard footsteps. I didn't turn right away, but I knew it was her. She stood beside me, no umbrella, soaked from the rain that had started as I arrived. She read the inscriptions, her mouth tightening, her hands buried in her sleeves. "You had them changed," she said. "I had to," I replied. "They deserved honesty." She didn't speak. Her face was pale, jaw tight. When she finally looked at me, her eyes weren't angry, they were tired. "How long are you going to keep punishing me?" I turned to her. "I stopped punishing you the moment you realized you weren't the victim." Her breath caught. I've been trying, she whispered, to fix things. I know. Silence stretched between us, filled only by the sound of wet leaves shifting under our feet. I was stupid, she said. Selfish. No, I said. You were greedy. That's different. You wanted a life you didn't earn, so you stole it. She swallowed hard. The rain ran down her face like tears. I was angry, she said, that he trusted you more, that I was always second. I nodded. You were. She didn't argue. I wanted you to suffer, she said quietly, but I didn't expect to lose myself. That was the price. She stepped closer to the grave, kneeling slightly to brush a leaf from Mom's name. Her hands shook. Do you hate me? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I thought about everything, the years of silence, the false inheritance, the way she stood in the lawyer's office with a smile, the empire built on illusion, the collapse. No, I said finally, I don't hate you. She looked up. But I don't trust you, and I never will. She nodded. That was the real punishment. Living in a world where trust was gone, where nothing felt certain, where every good thing might be another trick. She rose slowly, turned to me. Do you want me gone? I shook my head. No, just honest if you can manage that. She let out a sound that might have been a laugh or maybe a sob. Then she left. No goodbye. No false promises. Just a quiet walk back to whatever life she had left. Years passed. She kept to herself. I heard she worked at a small bookstore, lived simply. No more designer clothes, no flashy posts. She didn't talk much, but the few who knew her said she was kind, soft-spoken, always looking over her shoulder. As for me, I rebuilt. Not from poverty, I was never poor, but from betrayal. I started a foundation in my parents' names, scholarship fund, honest work, real help. I put their names on a library wing at the university where they met. Their story would be remembered. Queen, sometimes I think about Lana, not with rage, but with a kind of cold peace. Because in the end, she didn't just lose the money. She lost something far more precious. Her sense of reality, the ability to ever fully trust the ground beneath her feet. That's the weight of betrayal. And once it lands, it never really leaves.